presentation is by Shri C.S.R Murthy. He is the Chief General Manager, NABARD. You all know the NABARD is spearheading the agricultural irrigation development in India, spending a lot of money, a lot of thoughts, a lot of wisdom for taking ahead our agriculture, irrigation, and also the water resource sector in India forward. So now I will request Murthy Saab to share his view. He is Chief General Manager, NABARD. Murthy Saab, please.
Namaskar to everyone, and at the outset, thank the organizer, Dr. Marcella, for extending invite to us. Personally, I've been greatly benefited with the technical presentations and the views of the Secretary Government of Maharashtra and Chairman Central Groundwater Board. So we got the benefit of wisdom from the experts. First thing is a brief outset. We throughout watershed, it's almost a 3-decade-old experience. Invested roughly 2,000 crore odd, then 2.5 million hectares and 2.5 lakh farm ponds we have invested. Therefore, subject definitely this is a practice. I don't want to label it as a very hard. I don't want to use any hard words. This kind of a practice, certainly it is brought to the attention of head office what we should do in under these circumstances. That is our question mark. Then what we understand is, I'm also horticulturist, and I happen to be there in the senior level meetings at Delhi. So when I looked at the papers, how horticulture sector, because normally I also, when you sit it, we'd like to push diversification, farm incomes, farm profitability, and how our profitability diversification supported by various incentives. Of course, most of the incentives, as they rightly said, incentives came from the MDH incentives scheme also there. So when I was reading, it's probably directly or indirectly, probably horticulture sector as a whole, directly causing this kind of an externality, especially in the states like Maharashtra. The point is this: when we are looking at the national level, when we sit at the Delhi level, when we sit, all the experts would sit. Probably when we are channelizing it, when we are prioritizing it, when we are rationalizing the budgets, probably we'll have a time, like an occasion to pass, to review, to reflect what is happening in, and next probably there will be a kind of a mid-course correction, which is definitely possible. That's all we go when we meet at Delhi. Hopefully the next review meeting, which happens convened by Agriculture Secretary Staff. This is one policy prescription to us. We carry feedback to Delhi as well. Second one is a very interesting debate for me. There are two opposite kind of a thing. When we push, even from horticulture side, we push for farm profitability. There is other dimensions which is coming from the, as Dr. Pooja has pointed out, that is, it has become a competitive investment at the community level. They both are different dimensions. Then the other dimension is, if you more look at the intensification, then intensification, more use of groundwater, and you are on the other hand, you are other dimensions coming at, it is impacting at the community level. So there are only two dimensions. If you it's a the farmer decision, farm level decisions, and are impacted the community. So there are only two contradictory dimensions how we would like to handle these two dimensions. For example, if a farmer, now one more interesting thing is this: most of the investment has made by the farmers. Maybe it's coming from their through equity from their side, own contribution from their side. It has to come from the bank loan side. The moment if these investments are supplied a bank loan, definitely profitability would put into the picture. However, we call it that community has to make a decision, community has to rationalize it, community has to make a adaptive kind of a cropping pattern based on the natural resource stock which is available. This is the one thing which is ideally we are expected to do, which has happened to do, which we expect from the ideal watershed development program. The moment if a profitability is taken to the picture, investments also comes into the picture, how a community can collectively enforce such kind of a decision making, that is a big question mark. In fact, water budgeting still we are struggling. And we are not sure that we are not perfect at the water budgeting, though we are talking about it, we have used it in the capacity of the communities. Still sustainability is on this water trend, still we are struggling with. One more to our today's I was discussing with my colleague. This lecture added one more kind of a layer of a problem to our sustainability issues. We are already sustaining it with demand water resource is there, crop diversification happens, and the post watershed interventions. No, you know what kind of how sustainability is the biggest issue. Now this investment, the moment the water is available, then again we got a farm pond constructed, which we have no control over it. Though we are not explicitly, we are nowhere supporting that kind of intervention. Mostly our investments are surface flow control only, basically. But farmers do tend it. So bringing our entire investments to the north, that is one kind of a red flag to us also. Having set concerns to us that now there are very interesting points have come out. One hand, science is there. Science is coming from IIT. Then the practitioners are there for water where we began our journey. Then that regulators, Central Groundwater Board, and the suppliers of money. We are. So how we sit together? How they carry the collective responsibility of the maintain the so-called equilibrium. I mean, I will say that don't do it and don't say do it. That is not an issue. I will not go to debate it, but we have got a responsibility to maintain the equilibrium. How do we enforce it? Once one suggestion came out, this equilibrium has to come out. Communities have to be actively involved. Then water budgeting part, rationing part, science has to be taught, carrying capacity has to be taught, and structures have to be taught. This is one way of soft kind of intervention. One has to come from the community side. Second side is this, that also has to come, that regulatory side. That, for example, regulatory side I would bring earlier, yesterday, still it's continued to be the one regulatory clauses which we put to our bankers that if it is in overexploited areas, banks shall not finance any structure which is going to deplete the groundwater resource. This is a kind of a negative covenant it is there. Now, looking at today's point, again, I need to have lots many confirmations, of course, from the kind of a vice council from Central Groundwater Board. What we would say, there is one question mark is there in our mind. Can we add another clause stating that in overexploited zones, such as which is Sangamner, which has been done, even though we are not adding, farm pond is a very innocuous structure. It obviously innocuous now what it looks. But the farm pond, when it's aligned with this one, we should not finance it. That is a question mark I'm putting. We're not prescribing anything. That point, probably experts would say, shall we, for the interest of sustainability, looking at the 5 years ahead, future ahead, shall we, what kind of a clauses, regulatory clauses should we put in this kind of a, to avoid this kind of, to maintain the equilibrium? That is one thing. That I'm leaving it to the, it's a question mark. The third point is this, no, we have to, and one more point, which is very important for us, because we are also leading a climate change center over here. For us, the prima facie farm pond is an adaptation measure in dryland areas. That too, farm pond is a time-tested, proven, well-tested, and with different kind of models. But this model today gave us a lesson, though if it is an innocuous adaptation measure prima facie, but it may lead to maladaptation during the life cycle of the project. This is also one good lesson we learned from this. Another one is that, no, look at the poor banker who is sitting in a Sangamner branch, an agriculture officer. His job is to push credit. How do you educate? How do you educate him? How do you educate him? Look, this is the maximum you should do. Later on, you must stop it. It is easier said than done. What I mean to say that we need to have a clear early warning signals, saying that if you are looking at this without looking at the science part of it, groundwater part of it, dynamic water part of it, is that if you happen to see that, suppose if water has not been filled up properly in the farm pond during the rain season, that is what you observe it, be cautious. Even if that kind of a caution, if we exercise it from NABARD side, even that kind of a sensation happens to the banker side, then he will tend to be that he will not go to finance it. So this is kind of a indicators have to be developed, and probably local baseline and a clear cut groundwater mapping, extent of how much we can exploit it further. That is the one thing which is required. Central Groundwater Board is already been doing in the case of semi-critical area. There are many companies such as bank, they are not financing it. Probably that kind of a micro kind of a planning has come. Now many tools have come up. We also use the GS-based tools in our watershed planning. Probably this would be the answer to the question to ration the finance part of to this kind of a in these areas. That's what we are planning. It's very good insight. A lot of insights is given to us. I'm sure that it requires a further discussions at the policy making level. How do you regulate it? One more measure which I would like to suggest, which has not been discussed, it is based on my practical experience, which is happening with us, with all of us, on two aspects. One thing is the first thing which I do when I go to Hyderabad, in the morning I will get up at 4:30. The first thing I do is switching the bore well. Then switching of the bore well. And I had a lot of fights with my tenants, not on the money side. My electricity bill is my indicator, because that bill where really a lot of controversy arises when common pool, when you say groundwater is a common pool, if you look at your own personal experience with your tenants on the electricity water bill, when the price of extraction, when the really is the price, then people tend to rationalize the subsidies. Of course, it requires a kind of higher policy discussion. Probably this also has to be factored in. I'm sure that groundwater regulations would factor in this kind of a pricing part also, maybe for direct or indirect or incentive, direct incentives or direct benefits to address this issue on a sustainable way, I think. And aquaculture, I've been personally hit. I'm the person who has been hit. If neighboring aquaculture, neighboring farmers are converting the rice fields to the aquaculture, you are forced to convert it. Otherwise, you have to simply abandon it. This is the kind of externality which I've seen in your case studies, which has been presented in Andhra. They are the realities of externalities, and looking at the benefit of private benefit or a social benefit or your own financial ratio or economic cost. They are the big gaps which are there, which we need to address it. Thank you very much. I've been greatly benefited for this topic. Thank you.